Hello and welcome to ESPN FC Live. My name is Mark Donaldson alongside Stevie Nicol and Rob Dawson. Coming up today, we'll take a look at some of the English clubs in pre-season action earlier this morning. Also, what's the latest with FIFA and their president Gianni Infantino after quite a few days. And also, we will end with some transfer speculation, including the likelihood of Bruno Guimarães concluding his deal to leave Newcastle and move to Arsenal. We've got an update on that. But we're going to start in Sydney with a London derby between Chelsea and Spurs. Rob Dawson, this was rather feisty. Conor Gallagher with an early tackle, a red card for Kevin Danso, a late winner for Spurs, scored by Richarlison. And so much for a pre-season friendly. It had all the attributes, apart from the fact that there weren't any points available, of a Premier League fixture, this one. What did you make of it?
Well, yeah, proper battle of the bridge, except it wasn't at the bridge. I mean, it's funny with these pre-season games because obviously both sets of players will have been told, you know, it's a summer friendly. You're not meant to kind of steam into each other. It's about minutes under the belt and getting connections with your teammates and preparing for the new season. But when you put 22 professional players on a pitch, you know, regardless of the situation, you always get that competitive spirit. And Chelsea Tottenham is competitive when it's in the Premier League, and it's no different when it's a summer friendly. So I'm sure both managers will be happy that there is that little bit of edge among their squads, even in a pre-season friendly as they prepare for the new season. Perhaps a little bit too much, but as long as no one's injured and both sets of players have come through unscathed, I think both managers will be relatively happy.
Stevie, you played in many pre-season friendlies. There's not much you can take from them, but did you like the physicality in this fixture?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you know, it's one thing to be running around and try to get fit, but, you know, when you have to put that extra step in, that extra yard because of the opposition, then it absolutely helps. And the key is nobody got injured on either side. I mean, even the red card it's not a red card for a bad challenge. It's just about a guy who's in pre-season, who isn't quite ready, isn't quite up to speed, who made a bad decision, didn't understand that he's actually a lot slower than he probably will be in 3 weeks' time, and he ended up getting sent off. So yeah, I think if you can get a competitive game without it going overboard, then every single coach would have that every single time.
Rob, let's have a look at the Chelsea lineup to begin with before we have a look at the Spurs lineup. How many, I mean, forget this actual lineup as far as players are concerned, because Sharman Lowe's not going to start in goal. How many positions do you reckon are potentially up for grabs when that first game of the season takes place for Chelsea in 3 weeks' time?
Well, I would say all of them. And that's mainly because they've got a new manager coming in Xabi Alonso, who will have told his players, I imagine, on the first day of pre-season, everyone's got a clean slate. You know, different players will have had different problems with previous managers and felt that maybe the manager didn't fancy them or whatever. Usually when a new manager comes in, he won't have formed his own idea. He'll have ideas about different players, having seen them from afar, but it's only when you get on the training pitch with a player that you can actually see what kind of quality they have. You can see their personality. He will have told all those players that the positions in the team are up for grabs. Now, you'd expect, if you look at that lineup, you'd expect that Cole Palmer is going to play quite a central role for Chelsea. João Pedro was good today. Estevao has scored the goal. Again, a very exciting player. Levi Colwill at the back, you imagine, is one of the players who would want to nail down the starting spot at the centre of defence. But I would suggest that with 3 weeks to go before the Premier League starts, that every position is up for grabs. It's about those players impressing Xabi Alonso and forcing their way into the team. And at the moment, when you've got a new manager coming in, it's about him forming his own ideas and trying and testing different things with different players. I very much doubt that he's already looking at that first game of the season. He's got a lineup in his head. So I would suggest that every position is up for grabs, even the ones that maybe you think are nailed down, like Cole Palmer's.
Stevie, what about Spurs? Because the lineup they selected had a few names that will be thinking they've got a right chance of starting. Obviously, new signing Tonali in there. I thought Matisse Tell did well. Kinski was excellent in goal. But defensively, they've got plenty left backs. They've bought new centre backs. Right back, yeah, Pedro Porro still obviously on a rest following the World Cup. Where do you think is most set in the mind of their coach as far as who's going to start the season? And where do you think the Serbi's kind of thinking, well, I'm still not sure about that?
I think he's probably got a lot of "I'm not sure about that" than he has, "Oh, he's in, and he's in." I mean, what Rob's saying basically is absolutely spot on, and I would probably suggest that it's even more of a head scratcher who he's going to go with for Spurs. You know, all the new signings will all think that, well, they're bringing me here to play, so they'll, you know, the Van Heckens and I'm sure even Robertson thinks, well, he's brought me here to play. So yeah, I really think right now, particularly with De Zerbi, he's not 100% sure. He knows that defensively last year they let in way too many goals, were way too soft, and so he'll be looking to mix things up. And between now and the next 3 weeks, I think you'll see a lot of different back forwards playing for Tottenham. And then, obviously, he's going to be pushed into deciding who is that back four. I think Van Hecke obviously is an absolute certainty. But after that, Pedro Porro probably won't. Will he be ready for the start of the season? So, I mean, I really don't think there's anywhere in that Tottenham team that can actually sit comfortably at home or in bed or in the hotel or wherever they are and be sitting thinking, I need to get myself ready for the first game of the season because I know I'm starting. I don't think there'll be very, very few. And if he were to push me, I'd probably say Kinski is probably the only one who should be sitting comfortable.
Yeah, Van Hecke, they spent a lot of money on him, but again, a lot depends on what happens in pre-season. Rob Solanke got the start. How big a part do you expect him to play for Spurs this season?
Well, I mean, I would like him to play a big part because they brought him to Spurs for a lot of money. I don't think it's particularly worked out just yet. I think he's had injury problems that maybe disrupted his season last season. He's obviously a very good goal scorer. We saw that at Bournemouth. He's, you know, any player who scores goals in the Premier League is a good player. I think it's the hardest thing to do in the Premier League. And if you've got a track record of scoring goals in the Premier League, it means you're a very, very good player. I'm not sure he's quite shown that at Tottenham yet. He's done it in fits and starts, but not consistently. I think De Zerbi has said during pre-season in his news conferences that they feel like they've sorted out the midfield and parts of the defence, and that the next kind of influx of signings will be in that forward line. I imagine they're looking at a wide player and another centre forward. It depends whether it's someone to come and play as a backup to Dominic Solanke or someone who's going to come in and maybe play ahead of him or you know, offer genuine competition to play every week. I think that it's certainly good that Dominic Solanke is fit and available during pre-season. What you don't want is injuries dragging on through the summer and then affecting the way you start the season. I think the players now who are playing regularly in these pre-season games are the most likely to start the season. And once you get that opportunity, it gives you an opportunity to build on that. I mean, just to touch on what Stevie said there about Pedro Porro, chances are that he's not going to be ready for the start of the season. That gives someone else an opportunity to play in that position. And if you're playing well, you keep your place. It's as simple as that. So Dominic Solanke, if he's playing right now and playing well, that's a good sign for him in the start of the season.
Solanke's an interesting one because, you know, he's had a tough time the last 12, 18 months. I know he's had a lot of injuries, but he really didn't see the field under De Zerbi at the end of the season. And if you're Solanke and you start the season on the bench, he's at a stage of his career where he's going to have to start thinking about, do I need to stay here or do I need to go? Because Solanke's not in a position in his career where he can sit on the bench, basically. So of all the players at Tottenham right now, if there's one who's going to be lying in his bed in the hotel in pre-season thinking of what's going to happen, he has to be the one who's concerned.
From Sydney to Hong Kong, Manchester City drawing 1-1 with Inter, losing 3-1 on penalties, but a good workout. I want to have a quick look at the Manchester City lineup. Obviously, a lot of big names are still not here, but the key thing here, Stevie, Phil Foden starting in the 10 position, given the captain's armband. He's got a huge opportunity. Do you think he will take it and become a mainstay of Enzo Maresca's starting 11?
Well, if I was using your money, I'm not quite sure he can, to be honest with you. I mean, why do we all of a sudden think just because we've changed the manager, Phil Foden's going to change the way he plays? Maybe it'll depend on how Maresca plays. I mean, the first thing that struck me when I saw this game was Mubama, and I'm thinking, this guy doesn't look like a Pep player, but it's Maresca now. You know, they were playing a lot of balls from the middle of the park and playing off him. That's something they just don't do, and certainly didn't do. Now, if that's going to be the case and they're going to get the ball forward quicker, then 100% that means Phil Foden is going to get back in tune. He's going to see a lot more of the ball if he's playing in that 10 position. And so there's a good chance that he will get his form back. But until we figure out how they're going to go about it, if they're going to go back to sideways and slowly getting forward, then all that does is kill Phil Foden. Because that means he gets the ball when everybody's back in position defensively. He's got less time, less options. So, yeah, I think right now you cannot put your hand on your heart and say, oh, Phil Foden's going to be back to the guy he was 2 years ago. I don't think you can. Again, I was talking about Solanke lying in his bed wondering what's going to happen. You can bet your bottom dollar that Phil Foden's going to wonder. And I don't mean in terms of leaving the club. I'm just thinking about, is he going to start and how is his season going to go? He absolutely will be trying to figure out how he can get back to his best.
The goal scorer in this one for Manchester City, and it'll be the quiz question in years to come, the first ever goal scorer of Enzo Maresca's regime as Manchester City's manager, was Divine Mubama. Talented forward, spent last season on loan at Stoke, was going all right until he suffered a serious leg injury in January. As far as the striking department is concerned at Manchester City, Rob, you can't start and play Erling Haaland every single game. What do you feel as far as Manchester City's options outside of Haaland are concerned in attack are like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult situation for any striker at City. And we saw with Julian Alvarez that he was number 2 behind Erling Haaland under Pep, got fed up that he just wasn't playing enough and ended up deciding he wanted to go to Atletico Madrid, and City would have loved to keep him, but knew that they couldn't because Haaland is just going to play every week. It makes it difficult to bring in a second centre forward because they just know that they're going to be second choice. We've had a similar situation with Omar Marmoush, who came in January 2 seasons ago, and so he hasn't really played, and when he has played, he's had to play out wide. He's played a couple of games when Erling Haaland wasn't ready in an FA Cup game at Newcastle last season, where he did particularly well and scored. But the opportunities aren't there, so you have to look for other ways to replace Haaland when he doesn't play. I mean, there is a suggestion that Phil Foden could play in as a sort of false 9. Ryan Shirky could do that job if he was asked to do it. I think the expectation, though, at City is that Erling Haaland is going to play every game that they want him to. I mean, he has had bits of injury problems over the last couple of years at City. Certainly had a few at Borussia Dortmund. City have managed to manage that with Haaland a little bit better. But there was a stage last season where in the March international break that Norway decided that he just couldn't play 2 games in the March international break and gave him a week's holiday because they felt that he was exhausted. So Enzo Maresca and City are going to have to be careful of that. I think what you'll find is that they'll keep Haaland ready for the big games when they know that they need him, and maybe find a different way to play in some of the other games when he's maybe rested or left on the bench. I mean, Semenyo could possibly play there. He played out wide today, did very, very well, but he could play centrally. I very much doubt that they're going to bring in another centre forward to sit behind Haaland, because it's just ultimately it's a waste of money. You've already got Omar Marmoush there who can do the job. You've got Phil Foden who can play as a false 9, Semenyo who can do that job. You've got a couple of other young kids who could possibly come in for the FA Cup games. It's just a thankless job to be number 2 behind Erling Haaland because he's so good.
Manchester United continued their Scandinavian tour. They were off to Stockholm to face Atletico Madrid, winning by 2-1, a couple of goals from Brian and Mbeumo. Stevie, this is the lineup selected by Michael Carrick. As far as some of these players are concerned, look, they will be backups. However, when you look at Mbeumo getting a couple of goals, not playing at the World Cup, the chances for those that haven't been to the World Cup with their country either because they didn't qualify or because they weren't picked, like Joao Pedro at Chelsea. How big an opportunity is that for players like Mbeumo to hit the ground running while others are playing catch up with their fitness?
Oh, 100%. I mean, Mbeumo probably was going to be playing anyway, but at the same time, there's no question anybody who wasn't at the World Cup and all the major sides will probably, unless they're injured or really bad in the pre-season, are going to 100% get an opportunity. And we talk about it all the time, and it really is the truth. When you get an opportunity, particularly at the big clubs where there is a lot of competition, then you have to take it. And if you don't take it, then you really can't look anywhere else other than in the mirror and look at yourself. So, yeah, I think because of the World Cup, for people like Mason Mount, probably more than Mbeumo, this is an important pre-season and important to push your way into the starting 11 for the first game of the season. And then once you do that, it's up to you to keep yourself there. So, yeah, I mean, around all the big sides in particular, there is 100% going to be a lot of players thinking this is an opportunity for me, while the so-called big boys are not quite 100% fit.
Rob, what kind of impact are you expecting from Andre Santos at United?
Well, United are going to hope that it's massive because as we sit here talking right now, he's their main midfield signing. I think a lot of fans would have hoped by now that they maybe brought in someone a bit of a more of a marquee signing, someone like Elliot Anderson or Sandro
Can I interrupt you, Rob? I don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot of them. What does Andre Santos do best? Because I don't know. Can you enlighten me? I don't know what he does best. I don't understand why Manchester United signed him. Really, I don't.
Well, I think they've felt there that they've found value in the market. They've looked at some of the other options. They were shocked at Mateus Fernandes going from West Ham to Tottenham for 85 million. That just wasn't what they budgeted when they decided that he was going to be a target. Same with Elliot Anderson. They budgeted around sort of 85, 90 million for him. He's gone for 116 million. I think when they looked at Andre Santos, the fact that he's still a very, very young player, someone that they think and hope that Michael Carrick can develop. He's got Premier League experience, albeit not very much at Chelsea. I think he started or played 11 games last season, but he has got experience of the league. They felt that at 50 million, 48 million plus 2 million in add-ons, that offered more value in the market than someone like Tonali for 100 million or Elliot Anderson for 116. I think a lot of fans are going to hope that Andre Santos maybe isn't needed to play week in, week out. And don't forget, last season, they played one game a week. This year, it's going to be 3 because they've got Champions League football. I still think Man United fans are hopeful that United are going to bring in a third midfielder behind Santos and Youri Tielemans to kind of be that anchor in the whole thing. Now, who that is really is anyone's guess. That there's been talk of Angelo Stiller, who plays in Germany, that the options are quite limited. So it's the reason lots of United fans are quite frustrated because they knew that there was going to be a midfield overhaul this summer. I think they just thought that there was going to be a bigger name arriving. Right now, I can understand why they're feeling a little bit underwhelmed. From United's point, they will say, well, there's still 5 weeks of the transfer window to go and kind of judge the window after the deadline and not before. But I think going back to your original question, Mark, I think United are hopeful that Andre Santos is going to turn into an £100 million player that they've signed for 50 because they just didn't see value in the market elsewhere.
Yeah, didn't want to overspend.
Yeah.
September the 1st is when the transfer window closes. And as usual, we'll probably see quite a few players changing clubs in the final week of that window. Okay, so that's a lot of the English clubs that have played today, some of the bigger games across the world, given that one was in Sydney, one was in Hong Kong, and one was in Stockholm. We'll move on, speaking of world football, to FIFA and Gianni Infantino and his plan to sell off part of the World Cup is dead in the water. Now, we've had a statement from CONCACAF today after UEFA's statement over the past day or two. CONCACAF and its 41 member associations welcomes the withdrawal of the proposed FIFA Forward enterprise. The Confederation also commends its 41 member associations and the wider football family for the courage and unity they have shown this week. Unity has prevailed. Well, unity among most of the other confederations, Stevie. Where does this leave Gianni Infantino and his position as FIFA president?
Have a guess. Well, there's one thing, he's not resigning, and he's got way too many still people behind him who will just forgive him or just say, look, it'll die down, don't worry about it. And nothing's going to happen. I think, it's obviously great that CONCACAF and UEFA have come out and just completely vetoed this thing before it's even got warmed up. That's fantastic. But in terms of Infantino resigning, moving, being sacked, vote of no confidence, absolutely no chance. We saw how much power this guy has during the World Cup. And the fact he's got so much power is why he even brings this up. Because he obviously thought he could maybe get this done. That's why he's doing it. So, it's good that the different federations are poo-pooing it and sitting on top of it and not letting it breathe. And hopefully it won't grow. But in terms of Infantino's position, no chance it changes. He's got way too many people, depending on which way you want to put it, backing him or in his pocket, whatever one you want.
Rob, whether or not he has as many, and Stevie's right, he's not going to resign, and he's still got a lot of people that are for him. But I don't think it's as many as it was over the past few days. Now, there's a presidential election for FIFA in March next year, in 2027. Prior to this nonsense this week, it was a fait accompli that Infantino would get another term and his final term in charge. However, is there anything that any of the other confederations can do between now and when the vote is taken in March to try and put someone up against him, to try and force his hand? Or, as Stevie said, do you think it's a fait accompli?
Well, this is where the story is now. I mean, obviously, this story has moved very, very quickly over the last week. At one stage, the story was, does his plan get through? Well, the answer that we know now is no. And so it moves the story on from, does the plan get through, to does Infantino survive? And I think what you're seeing, particularly today, is a lot of people who had a grudge against Infantino anyway are smelling blood. If there's an opportunity to get rid of him as head of FIFA, now is the time. Now, Stevie is right in that he does have an awful lot of support. The reason that this plan was ever proposed in the first place was because Infantino thought that he had the support to get this through unopposed. Obviously, he's miscalculated that, and now we're at a different stage of this story. I don't think that it's definite that Infantino leaves. Stevie, again, is right that I cannot see Infantino giving up that amount of power himself. What we've seen today is UEFA saying that not only are they happy that this plan is not going ahead, but they've lost confidence in Infantino. Now, that's quite significant because of all the member associations. UEFA are obviously particularly powerful because they are the European governing body. That one of the questions is there anyone out there to replace him? Well, I've seen sort of speculation today, in particularly in the English press, about some names who possibly put themselves forward. One is Nasser Al-Khelaifi, who's president of PSG. He's obviously, knows exactly how football governance works. He's chairman of the European football clubs. He's sat on the FIFA Council. The word is from people around him that he's not particularly interested, and that's what you're going to find now. You need someone to stand against Infantino if Infantino's not going to survive. So it's all very well UEFA saying, well, we've lost confidence in this guy. Well, there has to be another option. At the moment, as far as I'm concerned, there doesn't seem like a genuine candidate out there to come and take over. If that changes in the next couple of weeks, months, if more member associations say that they've lost confidence in Infantino, then that may change, and someone may put their head above the parapet to say, well, I'm happy to run against him. Well, as of right now, it looks an awful lot like Infantino is trying desperately to survive. And if there's no one there to run against him, then he will survive, regardless of how much of a mess he's created.
Still can't mark his neck with a blowtorch. Infantino, but I don't even think that he cares. We end today's ESPN FC Live with some transfer speculation, which we'll get to in a second, but something that looks like it's pretty much a done deal, Stevie. Our colleagues at ESPN Brazil reporting that a fee has been agreed between Newcastle and Arsenal, 70 million rising to 80 million regarding performance-related bonuses for Bruno Guimarães to move to the Premier League champions. Does this move make sense to you from an Arsenal perspective?
Oh, from Arsenal point of view, absolutely it does. It makes them stronger. It makes them better. If they can get him and 70 million right now for him seems like a great deal. Can't believe I'm saying that. 70 mil, and I'm saying that's a great deal. When you think of the money that's been thrown around for the likes of Anderson. It's kind of hard not to go to the Newcastle end, to be honest with you, Mark.
Of course.
I mean, I just try to figure out, is there a revolution going on there, or is there a collapse going on there? I'm not quite sure. It seems like a collapse. But in terms of Guimarães, I think it's a super signing from Arsenal. The old cliches, at your strongest, sign and make yourself better. And that's exactly what they've done.
Well, I was going to give Rob the question about where it leaves Newcastle, because another transfer speculation we're going to speak about is Lewis Hall to Manchester United. There's going to be anybody left for their opening game against Liverpool? Where does it leave them?
Well, I mean, right now they look to be in an absolute mess. They've lost Anthony Gordon. They've lost, or going to lose Bruno Guimarães. I think Arsenal are quite confident now of getting that deal over the line. Sandro Tonali's gone to Tottenham. They've lost the manager. I think it's very, very telling that Eddie Howe's not decided to go at the end of last season. He started pre-season and then decided to go. That suggests to me that he felt that there was some kind of plan in place to replace these players and has been told, you're not going to get what you need. And he's thought, well, I need to protect my own reputation then, and I'm not going to take charge of you next season. I'm going to look after myself and quit. I would worry for Newcastle, because those four players that we've mentioned, if they were to lose Lewis Hall as well, are really key, or have been really key to what they've tried to do. And I do feel sorry for Newcastle fans, because at one stage they looked like they had a team that were only a couple of players away from giving a real good go to a proper title challenge. I didn't think that they were missing that many more parts, really. And instead of taking that next step, which I imagine lots of Newcastle fans thought they would do because of the money that their owners have in Saudi Arabia, actually it's gone the other way, and they've lost their top players over the last 2 years, 18 months, and now they're looking at having to replace them. And it doesn't take... The issue with the Premier League right now is that if you get your recruitment right, then there's an opportunity to push into those top 6 and 4 positions and get European football. If you don't get your recruitment right and you make a few mistakes, the Premier League is so competitive that you can find yourself very, very quickly being at the wrong end of the table and in a relegation fight. And you only have to look at what Tottenham have done over the last 2 years to know that even the biggest clubs, there might be people sat here going, well, Newcastle would never be in a relegation fight. Well, people would have never said that about Tottenham 2 years ago, and they have been in the last 2 years. They finished 17th twice. Now, I'm not suggesting that Newcastle are quite there yet, but if they don't get recruitment decisions right, if this new manager doesn't work out, the Premier League is so competitive that you can find yourself down there. And it only takes a run of 10 games where you don't win, that you're right in the mire, and it's very, very hard to get yourself out. So I hope for Newcastle fans' sake, and Newcastle as a football club, because they're a massive club, I hope for their sake that they can get a few decent players through the door and get some recruitment decisions right, because this is a really pivotal, crucial summer for them now.
You worried a lot about Newcastle, Stevie?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, over the last 20 years, this team's been, in terms of the size of the club, you could say they've kind of yo-yoed a little. They have, how many times have they been relegated in the last 20 years? Is it 3?
Yeah.
So I'm sure Newcastle fans know what that smells like while it's happening, and maybe even before it happens, because everything that's going on right now at Newcastle is all doom, gloom, negative, and I'm 100% with Rob here. You can very quickly find yourself at the bottom, and once you're down there, it's really, really hard to get out of it. As Spurs showed us over the last 2 seasons. So Yeah, it's a tough time to be a Newcastle fan, and I think they'll all be thinking about relegation because right now, I mean, who's the starting 11? Could you put five? Could you put 5 or 6 on the table right now and say they're going to be starting against Liverpool? I can't.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's a tough one. And if they lose Lewis Hall to Manchester United, that just compounds the misery. The final player linked with moves elsewhere. Stevie, will stick with you for this one. Cody Gakpo, Liverpool player linked with Spurs. Surplus to requirement? I don't think so. But whether or not he's a first name on the team sheet, what's your thoughts about this link of Gakpo heading for North London?
Well, right now, it's a really simple, straightforward answer. Not a chance they can let him go. And it's got nothing to do whether he's good enough or he's one of the better players or he's a starter. It's a body. Right now, Liverpool don't have any bodies with any experience. That's probably a better way to put it. They got plenty of bodies that could play. We've seen a ton of young guys in pre-season, but playing young guys to give experienced players or guys in the World Cup a break is a whole different ball game than playing in the Premier League. And right now, Liverpool is not in a position where they can let anybody go, and certainly not Gakpo. So, yeah, this is right now a complete and utter non-starter.
It's one of these, Rob, isn't it? As Stevie says, you're not doing anything right now until you see if a Barcola deal can get done or another deal can get done. Barcelona were another team as well as Spurs linked with Cody Gakpo. I mentioned the transfer window closing on the 1st of September. Do you expect Gakpo still to be a Liverpool player when it closes?
I think that depends on what other business they can do. I mean, I think if you can get Barcola through the door and maybe you get another one that maybe you look at it and say, well, can we make some money off Cody Gakpo? And if Tottenham have got money to spend and they want to revamp their forward line, maybe there's an option there to do it. But I'm with Stevie. Until you know exactly what your squad is going to look like at the end of the transfer window, you can't risk losing a player who you desperately need and not have someone in as a ready-made replacement. I think Liverpool, I would expect Liverpool to bring in a few more names before the deadline. It seems to be when I've heard Iraola talk, it seems like he expects at least a couple to come in. Obviously, you've got a massive player to replace in Mo Salah. So if they can bring in the right player, maybe it is Bradley Barcola from PSG. If they can bring in the right players, maybe you could look at offloading one or two. But until you sort that, you can't leave yourself short, because if you leave yourself short, again, I've just mentioned there about Newcastle struggling. If you get recruitment decisions wrong, you can have a terrible season. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that Liverpool will sink towards the relegation places, but Liverpool really should be looking at challenging for the title and at the very least finishing in the top 4. If you get recruitment decisions right, there's a chance to do that. If you get them wrong, you can very, very easily slip towards sort of mid-table and not be in contention for anything. And that would be a shame for Iraola to start on the wrong foot, because I think he's a fantastic manager, but he does need the right players.
Yeah, one thing is for sure, Spurs have already spent more than 200 million in this window on transfers. And if they wanted to get Cody Gakpo, they'd probably have to spend at least a third of that to get the Dutchman. But don't expect anything to happen soon. If it does, as Rob and Stevie have said, Liverpool need to get bodies in first. Thanks for your company today. My name is Mark Donaldson. We'll see you again soon on ESPN FC Live. Bye for now.